Right, so while we're red hot, Mr. Drury, item 12, setting of the rates.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. It's now time to resolve to set the rates. These rates have been set out in the annual plan 2014-15. That's our current annual plan. The Local Government Rating Act sets out the procedure for setting rates. It's got to be done by a resolution of the local authority. It's got to relate to a financial year, and in this case it's 14-15, and it must be in accordance with the annual plan set for that financial year. And you'll note that as part of this resolution, the funding impact statement from the annual plan, which sets out all these rates in detail, form part of your resolution. So you've had the rates in the annual plan. It's gone out to consultation, and now is the time to set the rate so as we can send out the assessments in October. Point 6 on the first page, 41, there alludes to a legal opinion that we've secured to establish whether the resolutions as drafted, because we want them to be right, do comply with the provisions of both the Local Government Act and the Local Government Rating Act. So we do have that legal opinion, and that is attached for your note. So, Mr. Chairman, that's all I've got to say on this one. It's all the work is being done on these rates.
Move the recommendation.
Okay, we'll get there. Any questions on the recommendations as laid out? I suspect there will be, because this is brand new, Councillor Bevan, but I'll come back to you, Councillor.
Thank you. Yes, Paul, there's two questions, I suppose. The first relates to what's described in these, well, page 45, for instance, relates to what's described in the heading as a calculation factor. Now, given that it's a general rate, I would have thought it would have been the same amount right throughout our district, but in fact it's not. So you've got, for instance, Napier's 0.00825 and Hastings is 0.00839. How on earth has that happened?
Well, it happens because we need to equalise the land values for the purposes of rating. And when we say equalise, we say that Napier City Council and all these councils have their revaluations done at different times. So if everyone paid the same rate per 100,000 of land value, and in Napier, for instance, had just been revalued, then you would be paying a greater input to the general rates than a person in, say, Hastings that had their valuations done 2 years ago. So what we do...
Yeah, depending on whether the values have gone up or down. But so what
precisely.
Are you guessing?
No, we don't guess. We don't hear. We receive information from Valuation New Zealand, who does an equalisation certificate for us. So they look forward and say, we've revalued, in that example, Hastings. Now Napier doesn't come up until there. There needs to be an adjustment made so as we can equalise the rates, so as it can be fair. Yeah.
Okay, that was my first question. I think I've understood what you've told me. The second one is the two columns further along, estimated amount of $100,000 value per property. I mean, that's basically just a repetition of the calculation factor, just multiplied by 100,000, isn't it? So I'm not quite sure why there's two sets of figures in there.
It's merely clarification. The calculation factor is what's put into the rating base. The one estimated amount per 100,000 of land value, and as we turn through here, estimated on per hectare, etc. It just makes it an easier read for people to interpret, rather than, if anything, we would delete the calculation factor, I would believe.
Right. So it's not a legal requirement that it's formatted in this way. It's just how you've chosen to present it.
I don't think it's a legal requirement. Yeah.
Okay.
Other questions? So you're happy to move, Councillor Dick, with the addition of an R and 2.3.5, even though we may be hot and wire, or we're not steaming hot, probably streaming or stream. Yeah, okay. So you're happy to move with that modification. A seconder for that? please. Thank you, Councillor Scott. Wish to speak?
This is a formality, and so I don't choose to speak. Choose.
No, as seconder. I just remind council that this is, and by the way, there should be an eye in Hiratonga Plains to its plains. This is a very tight budget again, and it's really nice when we come in subsequent to the annual plan consultation with our wish list of things that we really would like to see, but we have cut this budget to the bare bones in order to establish that, hold that rate increase as low as we possibly can. So we have to keep that in mind.
Thank you. Other speakers? Councillor Barker?
I'm going to speak against the resolution. I'm going to vote against it, as I did previously. And I do appreciate, as everybody else has said around here, the efforts of the staff to make improvements. No question about that. But in every other entity, every other organisation I've been involved in, there has been a very clear process and structure for focusing on the accounts. I would have expected this council to have a finance and budget committee of councillors who engaged with the executive branch, but there is not. All of these accounts are done at the macro level. We get general things, and there's no opportunity for the governance aspect of this council to delve into the details. Now, I know there are people who think that councillors shouldn't get into the details and that we should keep at arm's length, but I'm not of that persuasion. I think we should be involved in the details. The second thing which is missing here for me is what I'm used to, is a line-by-line testing of every item of expenditure against any other item to see that it remains justified. What there seems to me in this underlying budget is an acceptance of the status quo on everything. And if it costs more, we simply then add more to it. Well, I'm not of that view. I think that every line should be tested and tested thoroughly. I have not seen a process that has done that, in my view. The second thing is that I've seen other expenditures go up, and one of them is our investment in the Rotanifa Dam. The HBRC has come here for extra money, and we've simply given it to them. Well, if we can do that, we can look at other lines of expenditure to reduce it. For me, the first thing we should have done here is gone through every line of expenditure and measured it against the costs and looked at substitution or whether it was appropriate or not. I don't think we've done that. We have an obligation to ensure that we do our utmost and our best to see that the ratepayers' money is looked after as carefully as we can and that we do impose a rate, which we have a statutory authority to do, with the utmost reluctance and only when we are absolutely convinced that it's been done. I think our processes aren't as rigorous as they could be, not as sharp as they could be, and not as focused as they could be. I would have believed an organisation such as this would have had a budget and finance committee which would have gone over things very thoroughly. I do understand that it's been generally assumed this would be part of the strategy committee, but I've been to all the strategy committees and we have not had a detailed line-by-line exposure to all of these elements yet. I think we have not done this job as well as we might. So on that basis, I'm going to vote against this proposal and say that I think we could have done better.
For the record, you've missed at least one meeting, but we'll let that slide. Any other speakers? Wish to sum up?
Well, Mr Chairman, whilst I respect Councillor Barker's view, I don't agree with him. I've been in situations where the annual budgets and expenditure for a larger local authority enterprise, which happens to reside across the road, was tested on a line-by-line basis. and with meetings starting at 2 o'clock in the afternoon and finishing at 10 o'clock at night. And the end result was, part of the process was determining the postage and stationery budgets to be allocated to amongst 52 business units. The end result was total confusion and inability to actually see the real big picture and to determine what was important. In other words, so much detail that you couldn't see the wood for the trees. I believe that we employ expert staff. We continue to employ them if we trust them and respect them through the Chief Executive Officer. And I rely on their judgment, their professionalism and their obligation to point out to us when issues of seriousness need to be considered. But other than that, I believe the role of governance is to stay at the big picture strategic level, and that is, I believe, how you get the best results.
Thank you. Well, I'll put that motion then. All those in favour, please say aye. Contrary, no. Carried. Thank you. Right. Item 13, appointment of HBRC Electoral Officer. Hand that over to the Chief Executive.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. The next two items are both in relation to local body elections, and the first of these is the formal appointment of an electoral officer for this council. When Mrs. Gilbertson resigned earlier this year from her position with the Regional Council, that created a vacancy for an electoral officer. And so this paper is really providing an opportunity for you to appoint a new electoral officer to that role. The paper sets out the role that the electoral officer undertakes in the course of a local body election. But the key really is the recommendation is to appoint Mrs. Hooper to that role for a couple of reasons. Firstly, she's had experience during the 2013 local body elections as Deputy Electoral Officer to Mrs. Gilbertson. So she's been through an election cycle already. Secondly, in her role as Governance and Administration Manager, a lot of those responsibilities and skills actually align with that required by the electoral officer role. And indeed, that was Mrs. Gilbertson's initial role in council prior to her becoming the transport manager. So she retained her electoral officer role, but had started in governance and administration. So this is really just a paper to formalise that appointment, and I'm happy to take questions.
Happy to move. Well, question first. Let's have a question.
I'm happy with the paper. I'm happy with the proposal. I just had a question with regard to training. Does, for instance, local government New Zealand offer training?
Yes, they do. They, and particularly, obviously, the closer you get to a local body election, they'll be required to electoral officers are required to attend a number of training or seminars or meetings, updates, either in person or by web. So there's a very good training program in place for electoral officers.
Can I just, it's more of a statement than a question, but I was a little disappointed in the way that the matters were handled at the last election. I received, as a candidate, quite a threatening email from the Regional Council about what was alleged to be a deficiency in one of my signs. There was no deficiency. There was a clear statement of who authorised it. And I would have thought starting with a threat is not the beginning of a conversation. We got into some argy-bargy about it. I was on the point of going to the paper, inviting Hawke's Bay Today to come along and have a look at my authorisation statement and show them. It turns out that the people concerned who laid the complaint, which were employees of the council, had driven past this hoarding, which is set well back from the road, at speed and had looked at it. Well, I just didn't think that was a good enough professional standard. The second thing is, while people were complaining about my electoral advertising, there was another candidate who had no authorisation attached to their advertising at all through the whole campaign, and nothing was done about it. So I just felt that this wasn't good. I'm not going to go and pot another candidate, you with me? But I figured if people were going to pot me and issue me with threatening letters when I knew the law and knew I was absolutely right, which proved to be the case, and then others
Just hang on. In relation to
well,
appointing...
I'm just saying to you, my question is not a question. I just hope that we get a better standard than what I experienced last year. That's what I'm saying. And I want to make sure that as a candidate, I experienced deficiencies all around, and I just thought the attitude wasn't as good as what it could have been. So I'm just hopeful that this appointment is going to reach a higher standard than we had. That's what I want to know. Is it?
Yes.
You want a question?
Yes.
I want it from the person concerned. All right.
Councillor Balfour.
Given these new high standards that Councillor Barker is recommending, I would hope that there's a substantial pay increase involved in this position if it is accepted.
No, that's a no. I don't know, not my call. Any other questions? So moved, seconded. I think we've got that organised. You wish to speak? I'll only speak is only to say that obviously this is just for the Hawke's Bay Regional Council election, not for any subsequent new body if we ever get that far. So make sure that's clear.
I just have some discomfort, and I'm not happy with the implied, in fact more than implied, criticism of the performance of the previous electoral officer, who was very, very experienced and did a particularly good job.
It is in the past, and yeah, your point is noted. No reply required.
Am I allowed to speak?
Oh, you are allowed to speak.
I'm allowed to speak, and
Yes,
I'm
you
going
are
to say
allowed to
that
speak. Well,
I
you
support.
already sort of have spoken.
No, I answered the question, but I want to
we haven't
support.
put the motion.
I want to support the nomination, say it's a good thing. In response to Councillor Dick, there's no implication. I can prove exactly everything I said. There are photos, email trails, and an indelible record of every element of it, if that's what he wishes. No implication, just simply facts. And I felt they fell below the standard to which we were expected.
Thank you. Other speakers?
A little bit has been made about the role of this person. I do speak in favour of the motion, but I also, over all the years I've been on, I think we have been very well served by our electoral officers. Their results have been out very promptly, and information, and where there has been any queries around any breaches of technical breaches of anything, that they actually have been very helpful in seeing that things are corrected and put right. And I would think that the standard of has been probably higher than I've observed from the TAs around the area, so I really would not like the record not to be there, that there has been a very good performance.
Thank you. Mr. Moy.
These billboards can only go a certain way to enhancing one's appearance.
Hang on. We're getting out of shape here. Wish to sum up?
In summing up, in anticipation, I'd like to congratulate Mrs. Hooper. I'm sure you'll do a very able job. It's always been a pleasure working with you. Thank you.
Very good. Okay, I'll put that motion. All those in favour, please say aye. Contrary, no. Carried. Thank you.